zombie.
Our world is collapsing around us. Conflict in our societies, unstable economies, and rapidly deteriorating environment. We are causing it, and we can fix it. Everything we consume or use comes from nature. If everything we need to survive comes from our environment, then the only economy that can ultimately sustain any country should be one based on a foundation of healthy soils and biodiverse ecosystems. Agriculture involves the production of all food and fiber from the world's land and waters. Most of the planet is involved. It includes crops, forestry, fisheries, livestock, and wildlife. Agriculture is the foundation of civilization. Without it, we couldn't have a government, a bank, a school, a church, an army, a city, nothing. Today, agriculture has become the most destructive, extractive industry ever. Agriculture produces well over 75 billion tons of dead, eroding soil every year. It is the leading cause of global biodiversity loss and desertification. Agriculture threatens the future of all civilization. And this is not the first time we have faced this threat. In the past, more than 20 civilizations collapsed for the same reason. Their agriculture destroyed their environment. And they didn't have the chemicals and technology that we have today. But they failed. They collapsed for the same reason we are failing now. They didn't know how to manage the inseparable complexity of their organizations, economies, and their environment. We now finally understand what causes it, and we have a way to solve this problem that has plagued humanity for so long. Today, I will focus on one of two key insights that led to solving the problem of how to successfully manage and balance the complexity of people, nature, and economies. My father, Alan Savory, is a Zimbabwean ecologist, and he has dedicated his entire life to finding out what it is about our management that causes healthy land to turn to desert. And working with thousands of people on several continents over the decades, he slowly put together the missing pieces of the puzzle. In the 1980s, he developed a management framework, which is a guiding, filtering, decision-making process that enables us to successfully manage complexity for the first time. He called it holistic management because when we use the framework, instead of making decisions from the narrow perspective of the social, economic, or environmental aspects of a situation, as we all do now, it ensures that managers look at those aspects simultaneously from the perspective of the whole situation and then make their decisions, which means they're always keeping big picture clarity. So let's look at how we got ourselves into this horrible mess and how we can get ourselves out of it. We are a tool-using animal. There's almost nothing we can do without picking up a tool. And we have become so obsessed with tools and technology and everything we can make or produce with those that we have confused the things that we make with what we manage. Now, there seems to be no end to what we can make or produce. Wheat, cotton, timber, music, chemicals, meat, vehicles, computers, roads, bombs, buildings, spacecraft, toothbrushes, etc. It's never ending. And we do all of this using energy produced from nature: coal, oil, biofuels, solar, etc. When it comes to the problems with things we make or produce, it's usually pretty easy to solve. We can replace a battery or the parts, we can refuel or rebuild it. The things we make are predictable. They do what we design them to do. And if we don't like the technology or what it's doing, we can always change it, or we can stop making it or producing it. Everything we make or produce can exist on its own. It doesn't rely on anything else to survive. But the things we manage rely on many other things to survive. So let's look at what we do manage. We manage ourselves, we manage nature, and we manage our economies. Only 3 things. The 3 things we manage keep going even when the balance is upset. Do we die if we lose a limb? Do our families or organizations just come to a stop when people in them leave or die? Does nature stop when thousands of species become extinct? Nope. It doesn't matter how badly they are damaged by deaths, biodiversity loss, or even the collapse of an economy. Our organizations, nature, and our economies self-organize and will continue, albeit in changed form. In other words, they are complex. If organizations and economies cannot exist independently of our environment, it means they are connected, which means that when we make a decision for any of those and don't consider all 3 at the same time, it will knock on to affect the others at some point. So let's have a quick look at why our management started causing us problems. No matter what type of management we look at in the world, if you break it right down to where the decision is made, there is an identical core of human decision making. We are programmed with a genetically inherited decision making process that is the same not only in all of us, but in all tool using animals, which results in us breaking things up into manageable parts. None of us do this consciously. We simply aren't programmed to be able to make complex decisions. It can be done, but we have to teach ourselves how to do it. Our instinctive decision-making process would have carried on working if we had continued only making basic decisions for ourselves using our simple stick and stone tools. But we went and learned how to use fire, and that changed the entire course of history because it enabled us to make more and more sophisticated tools, which over time resulted in a drastic change in our social behavior. Gradually, we ended up domesticating plants and domesticating animals and slowly began to manage nature. Over time, we also added a financial dimension to everything. So we've ended up not only making decisions for ourselves, but for our organizations, our environment, and for our economies. While this change was happening, we never made any adjustment to allow for the fact that our decisions were coming with more and more social, environmental, and economic considerations and consequences. Every day, we all make decisions by separating these things. As individuals or in our families and businesses, We make social decisions, we make financial decisions, and we make ecological decisions. And our governments and big organizations are developing separate social policies, economic policies, and agricultural policies. It's not that we don't know that managing complex situations will have social, economic, and ecological consequences. We are all well aware of it. And people will look at the whole situation being managed with teams of social, economic, or environmental experts brought in to advise on what to do. And that's where they lose sight of the whole. The experts are giving advice on this situation from the narrow perspective of their different areas of expertise, unintentionally reducing the whole picture or whole web of complexity down into isolated, manageable parts. The more we do this, the more we upset the balance of complex systems, the bigger the consequences and the faster they're happening. And a big problem is that when we do make decisions, we usually meet our short-term objectives and we won't notice the knock-on consequences at the time because, like a ripple effect, the symptoms only become apparent a while after the decision itself. So we don't associate the symptoms with the decision. Most of us are now being affected by the rapidly increasing symptoms of advancing desertification. And those are increasing droughts, floods, wildfires, poverty, pandemics, poaching, social breakdown, mass emigration to cities, economic collapse, recruitment to dissident organizations, violence, and climate change. Einstein once said, "We cannot solve our problems by using the same thinking we had when we created them, but we are. Our management causes our problems, and then we use the same management to try to solve those new problems." The good news here is that we don't have thousands of problems to solve. We have thousands of symptoms of one problem: our management. Thank goodness we know how to fix all this, and it isn't too late to begin to turn things around even at this 11th hour. The holistic decision-making framework is being understood and used successfully by more and more and more people around the world, particularly by land managers and farmers. But this situation is so urgent that gradual or incremental change through individuals is never going to be fast enough to save us. Nature at scale is managed by politicians in cities developing agricultural policy for their countries. This results in laws, regulations, taxes, subsidies, and research influence. So while our land managers can choose what to produce and how to manage their businesses and farms, which is nature's biodiversity, this is only theoretically true because, in practice, government policy controls the economic and regulatory environment which people farm in and largely dictates what farmers produce and how they produce it. So we have to get our politicians to change how they develop policies. It sounds pretty straightforward, right? Wrong. Because we are dealing with something self-organizing and complex, whenever we form an organization, it takes on a life of its own. We literally create monsters. It does not matter how nice the people managing our institutions are. An institution will not behave as an individual behaves. Institutions will meet short-term objectives with zero consideration to the long-term inevitable consequences. Where you and I are capable of using common sense, institutions are almost incapable of it. If you or I poisoned thousands of people or animals, or wasted billions of dollars, or even destroyed entire cultures, we would be held responsible. Institutions do these things all the time and cannot be held accountable. And when new discoveries like holistic management emerge that go against human beliefs, individuals are capable of accepting the information at varying rates and understanding it, but institutions will oppose new discoveries for centuries, or until the bulk of society has understood and puts pressure on the institutions to change. These are the reasons we are struggling to get holistic management into mainstream thinking and practice. And it's also why we have ended up with completely inhumane, unhealthy, unsustainable agriculture, with policies insanely based on chemistry and the corporate marketing of oil and technology. Right now, in the US, there's about $350 million a year invested on pressure groups to greenwash regenerative agriculture, corrupt academics and researchers, and indoctrinate the public. If agricultural policy continues to be developed the way it is now by all governments, with politicians advised and influenced by narrowly trained experts and pressure groups, then the future is one of violence and suffering unimaginable, because it will be something we've never before seen in the world. At the end of the day, no matter who we are, where we live, what we do, every single last one of us wants physical and financial security, which none of us will have in the near future as it all comes tumbling down. We have to rise above our personal differences and meet beyond them, focused and united with one voice, pushing our world leaders and politicians to bring about this exciting new change, so that we can have agricultural policies that are based on biological sciences, promoting healthy soils and biodiverse ecosystems. Then we will bring ourselves back into balance with our incredible planet and secure the future for all life on Earth.